The future abridged. So this is something I like to do because everybody who I talk to, let's explain who I am first. John Biggs, John at TechCrunch, if you want to email me. East Coast editor. I see a lot of great stuff. So I am actually wearing Google Glass 2.0. It's actually inside my head. But I see a lot of great stuff, and people ask me what I'm excited about. And they come up to me and say, what are you working on? What's the most amazing thing you've seen this weekend? That's kind of like asking, I don't want to say, I like asking a prostitute what she did on the weekend, because I've seen a lot of things, and it's made me very, very tired. And I've seen nothing that makes me excited, except a very few things I'm going to share with you guys today. So yeah, it's not absolutely true. I see a lot of small companies come to me asking for advice. I see a lot of hardware. I see a lot of software. I see a lot of things, and I feel like I have a fairly good BS detector. So these are some of the things that are exciting me the most. So the biggest thing that I'm into right now, and this is something that's actually percolating up in New York a lot, and Brooklyn specifically, is 3D printing and artisanal manufacturing. These small manufacturing companies that are sort of bubbling up in places that you wouldn't expect them to. I'll tell a few stories about Brooklyn in terms of 3D printing. The MakerBot, the guys who make this thing up here, I have one of these at home. They just opened a 50,000 square foot factory down in Brooklyn where there were no factories. Nobody was making anything in Brooklyn. They used to make beer in Brooklyn. They used to make gloves. They used to make clothes. They don't make that anymore. But these guys are building hardware in Brooklyn, which is amazing. And in related note, you also have something called Adafruit Industries, which is run by Lamar Freed, and she's a woman entrepreneur. She started making computer kits out of her dorm room at MIT, and suddenly people wanted these little gadgets that she was making. They were little cars, they were little robots and things. And now they're building, literally doing pick and place, just like they do in Shenzhen, China, in Soho, in New York. So you're right next to, down the street, there's a really nice restaurant, and then up in a building somewhere, they're actually doing the kind of things that you would expect only people on an assembly line somewhere in deepest Indonesia to be doing. And they're making a lot of money doing it, and they're changing the face of manufacturing in New York. The other thing I like about 3D printing is that you're allowed to print my head. So if you guys want to download my head, you can. This is my business card, actually. So if somebody wants my business card, this is my head right here, this tiny little guy. So I'm going to throw this out. I'm not a very good thrower from this vantage point, so there you go. Got it? You got it, good. So the fact that you can download my head and print it is the nearest thing to teleportation that I've ever seen. And that's important because what you're going to be able to do using these tools is send a bit of data that can be turned into a physical object. Hardware makes software sticky. That's why I like hardware a lot. Why is Flickr and why are these photo sharing apps so popular? It's mostly because we have so many digital cameras, and our digital cameras are our phones, our digital cameras are our tiny little point and shoots, and we're uploading all this junk to the cloud. We're not looking at it, but we're uploading it. So now you can upload my head, you can upload objects, you can upload pieces for a stove. I'm going to print when I get back a knob for my dryer because I found that when I was online. I'm also a small business because of my printing. So I'm literally some dude in my attic, and you can notice up here, I think fourth line down, I guess. Yeah, the John Biggs 3D printer in Brooklyn. So if you look for 3D printer in Brooklyn, I'm just below MakerBot. And that's just because I've set up a little profile on a thing called Make XYZ. You upload your models, and you can print those models for people, and people pay you. And that's a new way of manufacturing. I shouldn't be able to do that. There's absolutely no reason I should be manufacturing stuff for people. I would cut my fingers off if I had a bandsaw. But I'm able to make little heads. I'm able to make glasses. I'm able to make all kinds of great stuff. I also like future transport. And this is another aspect of manufacturing that's changing. This is especially popular in the Valley right now. This thing right here is Lit Motors. They launched at our Disrupt conference in San Francisco. And what this is a two-wheeled, two-person motorcycle that has gyroscopes inside of it. And it stays up by itself. So it will, as you're driving, it'll just stand because of these huge weights on the sides. And when it starts up, it sounds like something out of Star Wars. So you feel like you're in a land speeder. You feel like you're Luke Skywalker. It looks amazing, and it's all electric. So you're basically knocking everything out of the park. If you're a geek, you love it. If you're green, you love it. And if you like motorcycles that don't fall over, you're going to enjoy it as well. So you could actually literally get hit by a truck in this thing. Another thing that I've been riding around on is an electric bike, which is, it doesn't look like a regular bike. We call it super bike because it looks like the thing that eats other bikes. And this bike I'm able to ride into the city from where we live. It's about a 20-mile round trip, and usually it works it on one charge. If it doesn't, then I'm stuck pedaling an 80-pound bike, but otherwise it's really, really cool. Then this is a recent interest of mine, and it's a recent interest of the internet. We had our Disrupt conference in New York, and all of the guys there, all the VCs on stage, they were all talking about Bitcoin. They all want to invest in Bitcoin. And I guess the way you invest in Bitcoin is you buy Bitcoin. So I guess it's not really, you can't invest in the concept. You can just put more money in and it gets more expensive, and then Cyprus buys all the money, all the Bitcoin, and ruins everything for everybody. But I mean, you guys are into banking, so this might be fun for you guys to get into. Bitcoin. So this is nice because the one on top there. Is it real? Yeah, it's real. It works as it's up on top there. It works as a system to share money frictionlessly. Is it volatile? Yes. I own one Bitcoin. I'm proud to say. I'm like the guy at the NASDAQ who runs up to the desk and puts an order in for just one share of Apple and just sits on it. I own one. I bought it at 192. Over the course of about 2 days, as I was waiting for the Bitcoin to fund into my account, Bitcoin fell down to 60. So I bought at 192. The arbitrage opportunities are immense for people who are stupid. 192, fell down to 60, then it went just about back up to about 89 when it finally funded, and I had paid 192 for it. So that was an excellent lesson in buying Bitcoin from reputable dealers, I guess. I don't know what it was. Should you be mining? No. I started mining in my attic. So now I have an extra heater in my attic. The computers that I run it on are about to explode. I was running it on my iMac for a while, and it was really, really heating up, and I was unable to browse the internet, which is basically my job. So I couldn't do that. So I was losing money by mining Bitcoin. So that's not a unless you guys have free electricity, so just do it. Just go for it. I'll send my computer over here. You guys can hook it up, and we're set. Is it important? Yes, it is important, because Bitcoin is a frictionless currency. It's a zip file for cash. I can send my cash to anywhere in the world, technically, and they will be able to pick it up on another computer and use it, technically, so provided they're able to sell it and buy it and use the infrastructure necessary to grab it off the internet and transfer it into a bank. But it's frictionless. What it reminds me of is the way they used to use really nice watches. So if you think about jewelry and gold and diamonds and watches, they're sort of a zip file for cash. You buy a watch or you buy a bracelet or you buy something in one country, you wear it across the border and you sell it in the next country. And that's an opportunity you hide your cash on your wrist, or you hide your cash in your pocket, or you hide it around your neck. And when you pop out the other end, you sell it for potentially a little less, but that's essentially what you're doing. You're transferring cash seamlessly and frictionlessly. So yeah, I am excited about Bitcoin. Does the world understand it? Not quite yet. Is it going to be popular? I'm not sure. I talked to the guys over at Coinbase, which are one of the most usable sites, and even those guys barely understand it. So it's a wild and woolly world, but that shouldn't stop you from wasting your money in it. So this stuff is dead, so don't do any of this stuff. And I'm sure you guys aren't doing any of this stuff. Groupon clones, those are gone. And e-commerce subscription plays, those are kind of the same thing, where you like buy a box of stuff, like some like famous person like Tim Ferriss send you a box of crap and you're excited about it. Or like underwear or shavers and stuff. That's usually what they're usually doing is they're usually going over to Asia, they buy a bunch of stuff from Alibaba, and then ship it over as sort of like $1 Shave Club. And I'm not saying $1 Shave Club didn't have a great marketing plan, but their product is a little bit subpar. And a lot of these products are stuff that you wouldn't normally buy. And if you have a lot of disposable income, you should probably be doing something else with it than buying a wooden box full of artisanal tea. Gamification. I know I'm talking to some gamifying kind of guys later on, but I'm going to tell them to get out of the business. Anything that you have to do, get badges for, Foursquare, that kind of stuff, any check-in, valuation stuff. As soon as I see that, I'm immediately asleep. Social anything. And photo sharing apps. Photo sharing apps, I guess we just cracked it with Flickr. Now everybody's got a terabyte, so it doesn't really matter. But these are all tools. And what do you do with tools? What do you do with a hammer? You can hammer a nail or you can pound people over the head with it. And that's why these things aren't extremely valuable. You need to figure out the right way to use these tools. So this is my advice as a dude who's seen it all, who's massively jaded, whose only excitement in life is that I'm able to print out my head in about 30 centimeters high. That's literally it. And then occasionally a good digestive process and I'm happy. That's really it. What should you be working on? So, what am I missing as a plugged-in man from the future? And you can solve this problem for yourselves. You can solve this problem for me. I wouldn't recommend thinking of a person like me. I get a lot of email. I get a lot of social stuff. You're going to want to look at the person who's just below that, somebody who's using this technology and doesn't quite understand it, somebody who's using it for fun, somebody who's using it to share. But how can you give us back our focus, time, and attention? These are three things that I need back. And I'm sure all you guys need it back. And I'm sure most of the developed world needs it back. First off, what I try to tell people when they try to do social plays or they try to do gamification, they don't own me. They try to grab me and put me into their system, and I'm supposed to use their system. There was one thing that was supposed to be some sort of was like a networking system for people who know a lot of stuff, I guess, and I don't know anything, but they put me in there anyway. So I wanted out. I realized that I was getting too many emails and I was getting too much information from these guys, and I couldn't get out. There's no way to get out. And a tool to get me out of these things, even a service-oriented operation to get me out of these things would be excellent, or to at least help me understand. And we're supposed to, as TechCrunch, we're supposed to help you understand what these things are. But we kind of go rah, rah, rah on this stuff too. So I have to sign up for all the junk that I try out. And I don't want to be there anymore. Eyeballs are over. The idea that you can get a lot of money because you have a lot of eyeballs, Instagram maybe proved this wrong, but we can look at Apple and say that they have fairly small market share, but lots and lots of profits. So just because you can get your product into a lot of hands doesn't mean you're winning the game. It means you've got your product into a lot of hands. And you've done it through marketing, you've done it through price, mostly. And you've also done it in terms of a quality push that you've probably had to pull back on quality to get your stuff in front of a lot of people. So this is stuff that I want you guys to think about in terms of building. And you guys are seems to me, there's a lot of cod here. There's a lot of aluminum. But there's also a lot of service-oriented opportunities here. Most of the people that I'm talking to are doing websites for other people. And that's fine. You guys don't need to be the next Silicon Valley. You don't need to make any more tools. We don't need any more tools. We have Twitter. That's a huge hammer. We have Facebook. That's a giant saw. We have LinkedIn. That's a hole in the ground. So we have all this stuff. What I want is I want the opposite of that. I want something to help me come back to focus. And this is a small place. Everybody's very, very kind and quiet and charming. So I'm sure you guys could bring me back to focus. So turn off your phone, see what you miss. Turn off your internet and see what you really, really need. And turn off social networks and see who you talk to. And do this over and over again, creating sort of a litmus test of what you guys should be building. Something that brings back our focus, something that brings back our ability to understand the world around us a little easier. We've moved from the goal of the internet originally in the CD-ROM days was to tell us a bunch of stuff. You had a bunch of encyclopedias on CD-ROMs, you had a bunch of books on CD-ROMs. Then we popped out into a system that sort of grabbed us and captured us and kept us there. And I'm a pure product of that operation. I left the CD-ROM days. I used to be a computer consultant. And suddenly I'm able to, all I do is spend time on the internet. And I don't want to be on the internet anymore. I would rather make wine. So this is my advice in terms of, it's a 3 or 4 word thing. I forget what it is because the slides are kind of screwed up. This is my advice if you guys are building software. And building software, building services, or building hardware, even better. I think you guys could do some manufacturing if you can solve the earthquake problem. Or that you need to think, do, and repeat. The trick is, when I go to the valley, I see a lot of this. I don't see a lot of this, actually. Not a lot of thinking. I see kind of a lot of doing, but a lot of people do play a lot of ping pong in the valley for some reason, so I don't understand what they do. I'm from Brooklyn, so I'm allowed to say this. And then they repeat. So when we go do this back and forth, you kind of get a mess, unless you do this in the beginning. So before you go out and try to make the next gamification product, before you go out and try to make the next Groupon, before you try to make the next social network for cod lovers, I want you guys to think. I want you guys to give me back my focus. I want you guys to give yourselves back the focus. There are lots and lots of apps out there that are doing this just right now. Mailbox is probably the best example. It's an app that allows you to, a lot of people say it allows you to fob off your email into the future so you don't have to worry about it anymore. But I would say it gives me peace of mind. I'm able to delete everything in my email box. I'm able to get messages when I'm able to think about the email that I'm working on, that I need to work on. And I have the peace of mind that I know if I have something coming up on Wednesday, I can tell Mailbox to remind me about it on Wednesday as opposed to doing some sort of calendar entry that may get lost. My iCloud is really messing up, so I have no idea. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in Raleigh right now. So as long as Mailbox is helping me do that, it's a very valuable tool, and I would pay a lot of money to do that. And that's probably your next big thing in the developed world. In the US, if you guys can make something great like that, if you can sort of distill what you guys do here in Iceland in terms of focus, in terms of hospitality, in terms of quietude, then maybe you can pull it off. I don't want to bring any of that fish skin clothing over, but if you can bring that over. I was talking with a buddy the other day, and he was telling me about his concept of this journey startup, and I wanted to share that with you guys. Silicon Valley is sort of a hard startup situation. They make tools. They make very specific tools. They want platforms, and they want everybody to adopt these platforms, and they want to rule the world with these platforms. Then there are journey startups, and one of the good examples of a journey startup is something like Whole Foods, where the guys said in the very beginning, let's make a little restaurant where we're going to, or let's make a little grocery store where we're going to sell Icelandic lamb and other fancy stuff. And then they grew, and their mission was always to sell this really fancy, good food to a lot of people, and the way they built their startup is that they kept on doing that over and over and over again until it got popular. Another good example of a journey startup is Apple. They're an unusual case, especially in the Valley, in that they don't care what anyone says. They have absolutely no desire for input from the outside. There's no desperate-looking commercials, at least not recently. There's no expectation that the Valley knows better than they do. And you'll see the exact opposite in terms of Samsung. Samsung built a platform. Samsung had an event in Radio City Music Hall where they had literally a musical on stage with people singing and dancing about the Galaxy S4. And I mean, I don't want to get a fanboy argument up here, and we can fight it out outside. But it was the worst experience of my life. And this is what a platform company does. They want as much bang for as much buck as they can pull off. I think that thing cost $4 million. It was between 4 and 40, and I heard differing accounts, and I don't really care. But the fact that they had to maintain their platform, they had to spend so much money and so many resources on a stage that nobody really enjoyed, is very indicative of the platform mentality. The journey startup is keep doing what you're doing, and if something breaks, fix it and keep doing what you're doing. You see that in Apple, you see that in Zappos, I would even say. You have a way of doing things that is different. That's all I have. Remember, you can email me, John at TechCrunch, to ask me any questions or pitch your stuff. We're here for you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And as much as I don't like looking at new stuff, I will look at your new stuff because you guys are special. So don't tell anybody else. Don't tell Denmark. Those guys are jerks. Anyway, thank you very much. A lot of fun.